Hey guys, welcome to another episode of LFA's Chop Shop. This week we're going to modify the turbo manifold that I've made and add a wastegate, among a bunch of other stuff, to help get this Camry further along the road and closer to completion. So I'm actually halfway through the intercooler build at the moment, which you would have seen last week. But what I want to do is take a bit of a break from that and do a bit of TIG welding on this guy. So this is going to be the exhaust manifold, or the turbo manifold wastegate port. So I'm going to weld those two together, which will get me a nice spot to work with. Then I've got one of these bigger 45s. This is a 2-inch, I think these are 1.5, something like that. So I've squashed it in the vise, and now it's about the same size as those pipes there. So I'll weld these two together, and then I'm going to put this on probably on a bit of an angle, weld that on there, and obviously relief where it touches. So I'm just going to weld it together for now, see how it all looks, and go from there. So I have those two bends TIG'd together, and I've welded just quickly this piece of angle iron on here. So the idea is now I can clamp this in the bandsaw, and then I get my squashed 2-inch, and I can cut a little bit off of there. So this fits a bit easier. I don't have to die grind all that by hand. So I'll go do a million measurements and cut that, and I'll come back. So hopefully you can see a little bit better now. The idea is to cut that corner off, and then when this goes on there, should be able to die grind a whole lot less. Fingers crossed I don't mess this up. So let's go the 180, a bit of a clean up on the sander and on the wire wheel. Now the idea is this is going to go on here. Need to steel clearance all of that. So I could have taken a little bit more off, but I'd rather go slowly and not have to do it twice basically. So what I'm going to do now is weld this onto there, and then I'll have a nice seal around the edges. And then I can get into here with the die grinder and take off that last bit that we don't need. So we've got all that welded up. So I'm going to try not to touch this because it's very hot and I'm very silly when it comes to that. So I need to die grind all of that out, which should be pretty doable. But now that it's fully welded, it's all nice and sturdy and it's not going to move and not going to go anywhere. So you can see I can probably get in a bit from here as well. Just tidy up that edge, make it flow a whole lot better. So the idea is, with my manifold, it's kind of a split pulse by accident. So 2 cylinders go to this pipe, 2 cylinders will go to this pipe, they will merge together, and then all 4 cylinders will feed the wastegate, and then they also turn up and the turbo sits sort of here. So the next job, once that's all cleaned out, would be to TIG weld this onto the top here, which is the V-band flange. And then once I've done all of that, the wastegate can bolt on the end. And then this one can go back down to the exhaust, and this one I have to extend and join into the existing manifold, which is currently still in the car. So I'll have to keep tinkering. Excuse the noise in the background, I've got the aircon running because it's pretty warm today. Got that all welded up, it's all diagrammed and good to go. So you can see the back of the wastegate there. And then I've got the wastegate bolted on just loosely. So now we have something to aim at. So now what I need to do is take the turbo manifold off the car so I can mock this up onto the manifold. So I have removed everything from the car, bolted it all together on the bench. So what I want to do now, mainly add that wastegate on. But I've also got this tab, which I'm going to weld just here, and then I'm going to weld a tab to the exhaust pipe itself, and then I can put a bolt through it, and then this isn't sort of just all free hanging off of the welds up here until down here where there's another mount. So I'll weld that on, and then I've also beat the back of this pipe and clearance for the drive shaft. Everyone that commented in the last video to say to do that, I was going to, I just hadn't pulled it out the car again. So I'll do that tab and then clean up this weld a little bit, and then I can exhaust wrap all of that, or heat wrap all of that. Then I can heat wrap this one once the wastegate stuff is on, which I haven't got all the bits for. So then the next thing to do would be to weld on some nuts onto the bottom of here, make this easier because you can't actually get a nut on this one. So I'll have to make something work, and then I can start working on the wastegate. And then in a couple of days when I get the rest of the bits, I can go from the wastegate down to the rest of the dump pipe. So it's going to be pretty fiddly, but we should get there slowly. Alright, that took what felt like 47 years, but we've got a tab on here, a nut welded on the back, and we've got 4 studs on here. 2 are different lengths, which is really annoying. Or the other 2, depending how you look at it. But they won't go anywhere now, so I can put the turbo on and put nuts on from the top, and I won't have to get down the bottom with the spanner, so I can actually bolt it on properly. And then, of course, taking the dump pipe off, somehow this bolt got really stuck and I had to cut it. So I have to work on that and get that bolt out, and then I can put it all back together and see how the dump pipe all fits. And if I'm happy with all of that, then I can start working on the wastegate. It's been a very muggy day, so I haven't filmed a lot. I gave up on the air conditioning because it wasn't doing much. So I've got this cut out. This is going to be the start of the wastegate pipe, I guess. And then I've grounded a bunch of all of there, and that actually fits on there reasonably well. I've got a few gaps to work with. Once I get everything welded together, I will like heat up and bend all of that. And then the idea is the wastegate, which is over here, can get mounted about there. And then that runner that you just saw will kind of flow in nicely. So see how we go. I'll just try and weld this together and get it working. Well, that was a huge pain. We've got the big old hole cut there, and this piece welded on, so that's boiling hot right now. So you can see I went in here and cleaned up this edge with the die grinder. I have since then welded it, so I need to go back through there, which is fine. And then up here needs more taken out of it. All around the back needs a little bit more. And then this side's particularly bad because the fit up was terrible. So I filled it with weld and beat it with a hammer, so it's as good as it can be. But now that it's fully welded, I can go in here and take all this out with the die grinder. So I probably got like an hour on the die grinder tomorrow to fix all that up. Then the wastegate can go on something like that. And then we just have to fill in that little hole and make a hole for that pipe. So it's a lot of stuffing around still, but I think tomorrow I've got a good start on it. I should be able to get this in and fully welded tomorrow, and then I should be able to put it back in the car because I think that's all I need to do. That's a lie. I need to do the exhaust out of the wastegate, I guess, back into the exhaust. So I need to wait for parts for that. But I should be able to get all this in, all welded, back in the car, make sure it all fits, and then pull it all out again. So progress. It's just slow, and this has taken all day. I'd just like to interrupt this video to let you guys know the merch store is finally up and proper. We have all of the stuff. We have air fresheners with the K10 on it. We have lanyards. Plenty. We have so many lanyards with the original El Jefe's Chop Shop logo. We have hoodies like this one. We have a few different Corolla shirts, and we have the basic t-shirt as well, in long and short sleeve. And if you're a sticker guy, there's a bunch of different options. So head over to the merch store in the description and grab yourself something cool. Let's get back to the video. So it's a new morning. As you can see, I made a huge mess of the bench yesterday. It's supposed to be about 8 or 9 degrees cooler today, so shouldn't be as sweaty and disgusting. Aiden dropped past this morning and showed me how to weld the intercooler pipes and the alley. So I'm going to jump back to last week's episode, finish off the intercooler pipes and learn how to do that. And then when I get that finished, probably this afternoon, I'll jump back to the manifold and get this episode finished. So I'm going to spend a bit of time on the die grinder and clean up all of this. And then I'll cut out this guy, clean that up, and then weld on that thing. So I'm just going to get it done because it's going to take ages. So I'll cut back if I have any issues. So it's fully welded and die ground now. That took over an hour and a half. So we've got the wastegate piece welded on. So last time you saw this, it was this piece and these 2 pieces here. So what I did is welded this one onto the manifold because I could get pretty good access around it. And then this one I welded last. So then the next step was I welded this one on. So I made sure that I could get all the way around there. With this joint, which was a huge pain in the bum, so I had to try and get in here with a TIG welder, which I gave myself that gap there. So you can see on the inside there, those welds aren't great, but they will do, and it's all fully welded. So then I went back with the die grinder and cleaned up as much of in here as I could. Try and get the best lighting situation I can. So this side was super easy. I had heaps of access from both here and from in here. So I did all of that. Then this one I did before I welded that one on. And then this one I had to do after. So this is the worst one in the whole manifold. But I honestly think it's not too bad. Could definitely be better, but we got there in the end. So now that's fully welded, fully die ground, and a huge pain in the bum. So I'm going to chuck some air through it and make sure that it works correctly. And if it doesn't, I'm going to say it did and put it back on anyway. But the idea is now if I blow air into these manifold runners, they should come through here and they should favour this hole over this hole. And if they do, then we're good. If they don't, then it's not good, but I'm going to just ignore it and do it anyway. Okay, I wasn't going to bother showing you this, but I'm all about the truth and showing what's actually correct. So if I blow into runner 4 here, it favours the turbo. But it does come out the wastegate as well. If I favour number 3, comes out the wastegate and a little bit out of the turbo. Number 2, straight out the turbo and barely any out of the wastegate, which is not good. And then number 1, bit of both, but mainly the turbo. So it all favours the turbo, which is not ideal, except for number 3, I think it was. Hopefully it doesn't boost creep, we'll see. I've never made a manifold before for a turbo, so hopefully this is good enough. I did go to the bigger wastegate, just in case it did boost creep, so you have a little bit more control, or you can let a bit more out. So hopefully we're good to go, but I'm not 100% sure, and that doesn't make me confident at all. So I thought I'd just quickly bolt everything back on. So we've got the wastegate in place. I think that's about the orientation that I want, because it clears everything in the car, because I marked it before I pulled it out. Got the turbo on, that's all clocked. So the exhaust comes out the back of the turbo and then kicks down here, bolts onto this little guy down here. And then the plan will be the bottom of the wastegate will come underneath the manifold and then into the dump just after the join that's about here. So you can see from this angle a bit better where the path for the external wastegate will go. So we're 90 off of here. I'll go through there pretty much, and then 90 back down into the exhaust, which comes down there. Hopefully it all lines up, because this has been quite a lot of work. So I only have 2 things left to do for this episode, and I don't want to do either of them. Number 1 is this oil line, which I spoke about in the last episode, and it's underneath the VTEC solenoid on the back of the head. So I don't really want to do that, but I need to because it is leaking. And then the second job is to rip the intercooler out, rip the brackets out, clean them up and paint them. And that's it. So it shouldn't take too long, but it's just more misery. So let's get into it. Turns out that's a water line, not an oil line. So I don't know where all the oil is coming from. So it's been many hours. I replaced that hose in there. That's all good to go. I played with the intercooler pipe a little bit and got some clamps on there so everything fits up nicely. Then I pulled out the top rad support and have cleaned it all a bit. Got the TIG welder all ready, and then some mates rocked up, and it's been probably 3 hours. So they've just left. So I'm going to jump in and weld the rest of this mount together, and then this can get cleaned up and painted and then reinstalled, and then I can pull the bottom one out, or while that's out I'll pull the bottom one out, clean that up and paint that. So I've just finished welding all of this. So we'll TIG weld it all the way around, welded the washers to the bar, and I can smooth it all out and make it look a bit nicer. Need to round the ends, but that's going to be a tomorrow job because this thing's red hot. So I'll round all 4 corners, and then he needs a wire wheel and a paint, and then it can go back in, but I'll pull the bottom one out and probably do the same on that. That one's fully welded, it just needs paint. So I'll come back tomorrow and I'll have another go. So I'm going to clean up this top radiator support, so just kind of cut some edges and round some corners and stuff, and then give it a coat of paint, and then I'm going to pull the bottom one out and do the same. and there we have the top and bottom mounts painted. So that's going to do us for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed watching me struggle once again, but we got there in the end. So next week we're going to be working on that Wastegate plumb back tube, so the last part of the exhaust, hopefully. So come back next week and we'll have a look at that. Thanks for watching. See you then.